morning, my name is Josh from CyclonesOZ and welcome back to your detailed forecast update for December 6, 2024. We have a lot to crack through today once again, including heavy rainfall expected to continue up in Queensland's far north, a couple of tropical lows also expected adjacent to the Queensland, Northern Territory and West Australian coastline, more on that later on in the video. We'll talk about thunderstorms and showers expected across the northeast of New South Wales and into the southeast of Queensland, a general weather and heatwave forecast for the southern parts of Australia as well, especially into the southwest. All of that plus more coming up in today's weather forecast. If you are brand new to the channel, please consider subscribing, but let's get stuck straight into things today up in Queensland's far north. Once again, I'm going to keep it short and sweet up here today. We don't have an awful lot to talk about. Rainfall accumulations yesterday, they were still good, especially around the Daintree rainforest, about 60 to 70 millimetres there, but they weren't as good as expected, and the rainfall now beginning to die off over at least in the next couple of days. Still though, some showers and storms expected today adjacent to the coastline between Cairns down towards Ingham and Cardwell. Townsville has a slight chance of showers today, but they're not likely to get anything, and the showers won't extend any further south than Townsville. Showers for Cardwell, Ingham, and the usual places, Innisfail and Tully, and a couple of showers also extending up into the Daintree around Port Douglas and Mossman. A couple of showers and storms also expected inland. The chance of severe thunderstorms out towards Georgetown and Croydon. Slow-moving pulse thunderstorms expected to dump some heavy rainfall out there around the evening hours, or into the late evening hours, actually at around 6 to 7 p.m. are expected out there. The rainfall across the Cassowary coast and the far north Queensland coastline in general easing off by around midnight, but still a couple of showers expected to persist into early tomorrow morning for the weekend. It looks like it will just steadily dry out throughout the course of the weekend. You can see the showers easing off through Saturday afternoon, then clearing out pretty much completely for Sunday afternoon. And then beyond that, there isn't an awful lot on the forecast, but I'll get to that in just a little bit. Over the next 24 hours, rainfall accumulations should be below 50 millimetres across much of far northern Queensland. There will be some outliers, especially around Innisfail and Tully, that do pick up more rainfall than that, up towards 60 or 70 millimetres of rainfall is possible, but for the most part, rainfall accumulations along the coastline should be between 25 and 50 millimetres. The majority of that coming through in the next 12 hours, and then a couple more millimetres expected from showers early tomorrow morning. Cairns not likely to pick up anything more than 5 millimetres, and then out towards Atherton, Mareeba and Revan, so rainfall accumulations once again should be below 5 millimetres. A couple of good drops of rainfall expected out towards Georgetown and Croydon, but again from thunderstorms tonight, they're going to be very hit and miss, so I wouldn't get your hopes up for those locations either. And then further up the Cape York Peninsula as well, again from thunderstorms, this rainfall is going to be pretty hit and miss as well. So for the remainder of the forecast period, there isn't too much in the way for rainfall across far northern Queensland. You can see showers not really piping up throughout the course of next week. We might see a couple of showers come in by about Thursday afternoon. You can see a few storms extending south of far northern Queensland into the central Queensland coastline here, and we'll get to that in just a few moments. We'll give a detailed forecast on this actually in just a few moments, but all in all, for the far northern Queensland area, the showers kind of keep themselves out of the Cape York Peninsula area. Still though, some rainfall expected around Ravenshoe, Atherton, and extending down towards Cardwell and Ingham from thunderstorms, so it will be pretty hit and miss, but a couple of drops of rainfall are possible Thursday afternoon and into early Friday morning. Showers will pipe up again next weekend by the looks of things. Again, the forecast now becoming pretty uncertain, pretty murky for the most part, and then we do have a bit of a question as to whether we're going to get some heavy rain next weekend into next weekend, or later next week into next weekend, when it does begin to pipe up from a bit of a tropical low expected to develop somewhere around the Cape York Peninsula. And you can finally see the eastern BF now coming on board with this tropical low here. A very weak spin up is now apparent on this forecast here. This is Thursday the 19th of December here, so we're really looking quite long range, but we do have a little bit of a weak spin up now on the forecast of the eastern BF, and spoiler alert from the other forecast models, which again we will get to at the end of this video, spin ups are still pretty hit and miss on the forecast. I mean, the GFS was calling for a pretty major spin up yesterday around this sort of area, but they've since dropped it from the forecast. The Axis G3 actually calling for a pretty significant spin up as well offshore from the central Queensland coastline. I think this forecast is a little bit wackier than what the Eastern BF and the GFS forecast models are suggesting. If we do get a weak tropical low spinning up, it's going to form somewhere in the Gulf of Carpentaria or offshore from the extreme northern parts of the Cape York Peninsula, and as such the rainfall will be concentrated in those areas. But that will be talk for another day. We're looking well over a week into the future, in fact closer towards 2 weeks. It's amazing how forecasters can work. We can get an accurate idea of what's expected 2 weeks out into the future, but I would use accurate for a tropical forecast with a very heavy pinch of salt, especially with this forecast here. It doesn't look like it's going to be a reliable one beyond it next weekend, unfortunately, but that's just the way things roll with a forecast. Let's get out of far northern Queensland. We will revisit them at the end of the video, I do promise that, and let's head into the central Queensland area and into the southeastern Queensland area, because we do have some interesting stuff to talk about there. Showers and storms last night were disappointing across the southeastern corner of Queensland. I did say say rainfall accumulations would be averaging between 25 and 50 millimetres around the granite belt area. Well, they were very disappointing indeed. Accumulations between 5 and 15 millimetres were the norm. There were still places that picked up over 50 millimetres of rainfall, but for the most part, like I said, those rainfall accumulations were disappointing, and unfortunately nothing really coming through throughout the course of today. A couple of storms possible around Wollongara on the Queensland-New South Wales border and into New South Wales itself, but again, nothing crazy. A few storms also expected into the northeast of New South Wales tomorrow afternoon. I'll get to that in just a few moments because we do have an outbreak on our hands for tomorrow afternoon into New South Wales. And then Sunday, a few storms are possible into the extreme northeastern parts of New South Wales, firing up from around 1 or 2 p.m. in the afternoon, then extending into the southeastern corner of Queensland by around 5 p.m. These thunderstorms here will certainly be quite mature once they get into the southeastern corner of Queensland, especially along the border of New South Wales and Queensland outside of Boonah and Beaudesert, around Woodinbong and Natural Bridge, that sort of area, and then extending across towards Warwick and Stanthorpe, which means that they will be high precipitation storm modes. Lots of rainfall expected, the chance of some heavy falls in this part of the more mountainous areas outside of the scenic rim. But again, these thunderstorms are going to be very isolated, very hit and miss for the most part, so not too many locations are expecting significant impacts from them. These thunderstorms do pipe up a little bit further into around 7 or 8 p.m. at night. You can see them extending up towards Guyanda, north of Kingaroy and Gympie, much further inland though, and these communities will be again very hit and miss and quite lucky to receive rainfall, frankly, if they do pick up anything. Toowoomba could see a couple of storms late Sunday night, but again, for the most part, this does look like a pretty minor outbreak. A few good severe thunderstorms though certainly do look possible, especially considering the conditions here. We will have plenty of instability in the atmosphere, in fact heaps of instability to go around for these thunderstorms here, especially around the Gold Coast, and then adjacent to the Sunshine Coast north of Brisbane. Thunderstorms around the Kingaroy area will certainly have plenty of instability to make the most of. Good conditions as well, plenty of moist air streaming in from the coast. In fact, the humidity levels are going to be sky high for this thunderstorm event, and again, temperatures not looking too bad either for Sunday. They're well into the early to mid 30s across the southeastern corner of Queensland. It's going to be a scorcher actually on Sunday across the southeastern corner of Queensland, coupled with high humidity values. Those feels like temperatures are going to be through the roof, so it's going to be quite an uncomfortable weekend in terms of humidity. So it is quite interesting that these forecasts are quite weak and quite lackluster actually, because it is a really good setup for thunderstorms. You can see the GFS calling for squat, same with the Axis G3. So it'll be interesting to see what the Bureau of Meteorology's Axis convective model actually has to say, which we will find out in tomorrow morning's forecast update. But I just have a little bit of a hunch now looking at those conditions. It didn't occur to me how good they actually were when I was researching this video. I just thought, yeah, stock standard stuff for southeastern Queensland, that we might see a couple more gnarly storms tomorrow afternoon. So not tomorrow afternoon, Sunday afternoon. So I would not be surprised if some widespread, more severe thunderstorms, still though only with the threat of heavy rainfall and maybe the isolated damaging wind gust here and there across the southeastern corner of Queensland into the coalfields and the granite belt. It'll be interesting to see what actually happens in this sort of area. Certainly am quite keen to see what actually happens by Sunday night into early Monday morning, and I will be bringing you the latest, and I'll have a detailed forecast update on this tomorrow morning as well. Let's head out of Queensland just temporarily and into the southeastern corner of New South Wales, and also for Victoria. We have plenty of stuff to cover here, that's for sure, especially for tomorrow. We've got a nice thunderstorm outbreak expected. That's just a way to say it, really. It is going to be a night filled with gnarly thunderstorms tomorrow. You can already start to see the preface to this, a little bit of showers and a bit of a cold front. I mean, you can't really see it here because the satellite imagery doesn't want to load in, but you can see a couple of clouds now streaming through South Australia as a surface trough dragging in moisture from the Northern Territory, coupled with a weak cold front extending across the Great Australian Bight over towards Tasmania, couples with some nice warm moist air, and as such we're getting thunderstorms developing along a dry line into the eastern half rather of South Australia. And you can see they're already starting to pick up some heavy rainfall here outside of Adelaide. Around the Lameroo area you can see some good thunderstorms now starting to move in. They're expected to head into Victoria probably by the time this video goes live as well. Now it is going to be a warm day again in Victoria today. Temperatures are well into the mid 30s across much of the state, and then into the high 30s to early 40s for much of interior parts of New South Wales. Stock standard stuff for this time of the year. Plenty of thunderstorms expected to go round into the interior parts of New South Wales as well. Possibly severe thunderstorms into the western half of New South Wales. Also expecting severe thunderstorms adjacent to the western side of Sydney, especially inland out towards Orange and Lithgow and Bathurst. Some good severe thunderstorms expected out there. Damaging winds, large hailstones, and heavy rainfall. The typical stuff for this time of the year in this part of New South Wales. These probably aren't going to be storms that you need to worry about. Certainly nothing to be concerned concerned about at this time in terms of really dangerous severe thunderstorms. They could get a little bit gnarly further out to the western half of New South Wales, but adjacent to the coastline, they're not expected to be anything crazy, just some stock standard severe stuff, nothing to get, more so stuff to get excited about, I guess, if you're a thunderstorm lover. Certainly going to be a bit of an exciting night, plenty of lightning expected to go around it with a setup like this as well. Now, the rainfall and storms will ease off as they normally do throughout the night, but not for areas along the New South Wales and Victoria border. You can see plenty of rainfall and storms continuing into the late night hours and into early tomorrow morning, and they're going to fire up in dramatic fashion from about sunrise tomorrow along the border of New South Wales and Victoria, extending up through the foothills areas of the Blue Mountains, extending right up through Young, up towards Orange and Parkes, and even as far north as Tottenham and Dubbo. We're expecting some good thunderstorms right through the morning hours. Plenty of heavy rainfall as well expected to go around. We're going to be waking up to tomorrow morning to some very heavy rainfall accumulations in this little pocket of New South Wales here outside of Wagga Wagga, like I said, into the foothills. So the rainfall accumulations are not going to be affecting too many people here, but certainly some farms are expecting some great rainfall accumulations, and I would not be surprised if we're waking up tomorrow morning with Wagga Wagga having 50 or 60 millimetres in the gauge. So if you do live in this part of New South Wales, let me know tomorrow morning how much rainfall you do have in the comment section. You might also get a feature in tomorrow morning's forecast update just with how much rainfall you pick up, because I am quite hopeful that some of these locations are going to pick up some pretty significant rainfall accumulations. The convective forecast models are going to town with this forecast as well. Plenty of really good rainfall expected from these thunderstorms here right through later this afternoon and into early tomorrow morning as well. These thunderstorms are going to be long-lived, likely to upscale into a large squall line for tomorrow morning, or by tonight into early tomorrow morning local time. And this squall line will, of course, be high precipitation. Plenty of lightning, plenty of rainfall. It's going to be teeming down around midnight across interior parts of New South Wales, extending between West Wyalong down towards Wagga Wagga, or maybe just after midnight. There will be plenty of rainfall to go around in this part of New South Wales and Victoria. And again, forecast models really just, like I said, going to town with this forecast here. Plenty of rainfall is expected, which again is fantastic to see. These locations aren't exactly parched for rainfall, but any little bit helps, especially this time of the year as we're heading into the dry season for these parts of Victoria and New South Wales. And as you can see, rainfall accumulations over the next day and a half roughly expected to be in excess of 60 to up towards 70 millimetres outside of Canberra. Canberra expecting about 25 millimetres. I reckon they could get a little bit more than that. Wagga Wagga again expecting about 10 to 20 millimetres on this forecast here. Under the right conditions, they will pick up much more than that. But pretty much everywhere along the New South Wales Victoria border, extending between Mildura right across towards Albury, some great accumulations expected there. I believe that's really going to be the hot zone for a couple of these thunderstorms. Melbourne could also see some good rainfall accumulations from these thunderstorms. We will revisit this in tomorrow morning's forecast update, but it looks like by tomorrow morning these thunderstorms, or at least this thunderstorm event, will be pretty much over for the southern parts of New South Wales. A couple of storms firing up into the interior parts of New South Wales later tomorrow night. They look like slow-moving pulse thunderstorms. Could be a little bit of a rain-making event across New South Wales as well, extending between Winaring down towards Dubbo and through Burke. You can see some good thunderstorms expected out there, but again, nothing crazy. A couple of severe ones for heavy rainfall. Again, nothing crazy, just stock standard stuff for this time of the year. Let's head out of New South Wales and head over west. Again, we do want to talk about that heat wave just briefly, because things are going to start warming up from today across the southwest of Western Australia before we get to those tropical cyclone talks later on in this forecast update. So you can see Perth expecting a nice top of 31 degrees Celsius today, very warm indeed. Well, not very warm for this time of year, but still nice and warm. I imagine those beaches are going to start to fill up as well. Tomorrow's going to be even warmer, expecting a top into the early 30s once again, probably around that kind of 32 or even 33 degree mark. You can see temperatures really expected to rise or start rising from tomorrow, and you can see this west coast trough now starting to extend down the west coast, and that's where these temperatures are going to skyrocket. Warmer still on Sunday. Looks like it's going to get up to about 34 as well. Temperatures going to be sky high around Paraburdoo and up towards Panawonsia. Temperatures up towards 47 there under this low pressure system. Typical stuff at this time of the year, but still that is going to be a scorcher. So make sure you're well hydrated and get out of the sun after about 10 o'clock, and don't go back into the sun till about 5 o'clock, because it is going to be a hot one up there. I'm very excited to see what temperatures actually get recorded. I imagine the people up there are not excited to see what temperatures get recorded, because it is going to be, like I said, a scorcher. A little bit of a reprieve to the heat for Perth, at least on Monday, down to 31, and then Tuesday is going to be back up into the mid-30s, up towards 34 again for Tuesday, and you can see this west coast trough really starting to build. Temperatures outside of Carnarvon and Shark Bay up towards 47 again, very warm indeed even for this time of the year. And then for Wednesday, those temperatures start to shoot up along the west coast of WA. You can see temperatures up into the early 40s expected into the Murchison district outside of Kalbarri, up towards 45 there. Perth expecting a top of 39 degrees. I reckon we could scratch 40 degrees on Wednesday under the right conditions. Definitely the northern suburbs expecting 40 degrees, and then Thursday things could either cool down or continue to warm up. Perth expecting a top of 37 on this forecast here, depending on what this west coast trough does do. By Friday, though, those temperatures as this west coast trough moves further inland will, being pushed away by this tropical low, which you can see offshore from Exmouth, those temperatures will begin to cool down finally. But then it's going to get really, really humid indeed, and plenty of thunderstorms expected across interior parts of Western Australia. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. You either get the hot, dry heat or the cooler but very, very humid heat, which the southwest, I mean, we really don't like that kind of stuff down here. We're not tropical and we're not built for the tropics, and the humidity in the southwest of WA really is a killer. So it is a double-edged sword, and it looks like we're going to get a taste of everything. We're going to get a taste of the southwest summer early next week, and then later next week we're going to get a taste of the tropics. So we will wait and see on what actually happens. But beyond about Friday, the forecast is just too unreliable because it is impacted by this tropical low, which we're going to talk about right now. So let's pull this forecast back to Monday. This system now has a 50-50 chance of becoming a tropical cyclone in the Australian region sometime in the next 7 days, as per the Bureau of Meteorology. I'm giving this storm's chances a little bit higher than that. I'm probably going to go about 65 to 70% here. It really does look like it is going to happen, and if it doesn't happen, the system behind it, which again we will get to in just a few minutes, story of today's video, we'll get to it in just a few minutes. The system behind it does look like a very hot shot at becoming a strong tropical cyclone as well. More on that, and you guessed it, a few minutes. Offshore from Western Australia, you can see this system spinning up. It is a very large system by around Wednesday. There's still a big discrepancy between the major forecast models. The GFS calling for this to be a much more compact and robust system further offshore from Western Australia. You can see it well offshore here, about 1,000 kilometres away from Karratha and about 1,200 from Exmouth. It will likely be a stronger system if it heads further offshore and becomes more compact, but this system here will also bring impacts to Western Australia and much needed rainfall as well. So I'm kind of hoping right now, as sick as it sounds, the tropical low offshore from Western Australia, just purely because of the rainfall that it will bring to the WA coastline, especially around the Pilbara and the Gascoyne region, it will be very, very welcome indeed, especially considering rainfall there can be as rare as hen's teeth right throughout the year. Good rainfall accumulation is expected if this forecast materialises. Again, it's very hard to tell between other forecast models. The GFS calling for this system, like you know, much further offshore, and the GFS is generally speaking a slightly more reliable forecast model. The Axis G3 calling for this system also to be substantially further offshore as well, and the Bureau of Meteorology's forecast also takes this system slightly further offshore as well. So I think the Eastern River forecast here might be on the less likely side here. Unfortunately, the rainfall doesn't look like it's going to materialise across parts of the Pilbara and the Gascoyne like this forecast is suggesting. The most likely track for this tropical low is somewhere where it develops here, becomes a tropical cyclone around here where the cursor is, and then follows this kind of path here, kind of a mix between the Eastern Relief and the GFS model here. In short, well away from Western Australia, not likely to bring any significant impacts at all. It will likely recurve towards Western Australia sometime late next week and into early next weekend. Now what that means is if it's close to Western Australia, it will likely landfall as a tropical low or a very weak cyclone between Carnarvon and Exmouth, or Carnarvon and Karratha. It will bring plenty of rainfall into this region of Western Australia, again a parched region of Western Australia, and then those thunderstorms and that humidity will become very prevalent and quite lethal, to be honest, around the southwest of Western Australia in terms of just how uncomfortable things will be sometime this weekend. But if it recurves and the track is further away from the shore, you're not going to feel it at all across Western Australia whatsoever. So it is still a very, very uncertain forecast, and it's very, very hard to say still, but as a forecaster, I reckon this system is going to take a slightly further offshore track, probably somewhere through here. Gee, it'd be great if I could draw on this. That'd be a great feature from Windy, but I think it is going to take a track somewhere beginning here, forming into a tropical cyclone around here, peaking as a category 1 or 2 strength cyclone here, and then recurving offshore and becoming basically a remnant low offshore from Western Australia. I don't think it's going to bring too many impacts to Western Australia. Again, we will revisit this sometime early next week and really hone in on the details of this system. It is still an uncertain forecast. And then if we switch it back to the GFS forecast here, it looks like we're going to have another system right behind it, this one much closer to Christmas as well. Now this tropical cyclone takes a very, very conducive track to being a powerful tropical cyclone, wrapping itself up south of Indonesia. It's a much smaller system, which means it'll be able to get itself together much better, and just offshore from Western Australia you can see it rapidly intensifies here into what's probably a category 3 or 4 strength equivalent tropical cyclone here. Very strong system indeed, before it gradually weakens off by early next fortnight around the 17th or the 18th of December, still very far away from the West Australian coastline, and because it is going to be a small system on this forecast at least, it is not going to be bringing any major impact. Still could be a bit gaily around kind of Barrow Island and some of the islands offshore from Western Australia, but Karratha and Exmouth, just a few drops of rainfall here and there, maybe a bit of cloud as well, so nothing too crazy expected there. Now, the thing that holds me back from saying that this is going to be a definite, we're expecting a powerful cyclone offshore from Western Australia, is just the fact that it is still a long way away, and as you can see, no other forecast model is calling for it in pretty much any way, shape or form. Axis G3 does have something, a little bit of a rumble by the 15th of December here, but you can see between the other forecast models, they really don't know what they're calling for at this time. So we will have to wait and see over the coming couple of days to what this system is actually expected to do. If it does form, it's likely to become a powerful one, but the chances of formation right now are probably at about 10 to 15%. They're not high at all. The GFS model can be very accurate over the 14-day period, but it can also spin up some absolutely crazy scenarios, and it looks like it's trying to do that right now, but it's kind of on the cusp of being believable, which is why I'm not flat out ignoring this system at this time. Either way, another tropical cyclone, completely understandable for this time of the year, especially offshore from Western Australia. We knew this would be a hot zone at this time of the year, and it's really shaping up to be a hot zone as well, so we will wait and see on what the forecast actually, how it develops over the coming couple of days. That will give us a great idea on what's expected offshore from Western Australia. I'm very conscious of how long this video is run for, so I'm going to keep it short and sweet across the Cape York Peninsula and parts of far northern Queensland. Yesterday we were talking about a tropical low spinning up somewhere in the Gulf of Carpentaria. It looks like it's kind of this system here offshore from Western Australia. The GFS has kind of shifted the tropical low spin up from over Arnhem Land and then moved it a little bit further towards the Kimberley region of Western Australia, and as such it swung around in this way as opposed to sliding into the Gulf of Carpentaria, and that's a very normal thing as well for a forecast model to do, especially considering that is a common thing to happen in Western Australia. Sometimes we get tropical lows that form north of the Northern Territory, and because of the lack of steering currents up there, they kind of just stall, and then they might shunt a little bit further this way, and then they'll get dragged this way towards Western Australia, and they really just sit there and can't make their mind up on where they want to go. And it looks like that was a classic case of what was going to happen here. Unfortunately though, especially for the parched locations across parts of far northern Queensland, it looks like the rainfall has been taken away from them and shifted over to Western Australia. So the rainfall here for the far north of Queensland, there is the chance of a tropical low spinning up sometime into the later parts of December. I mean, there always is at this time of the year, but there's nothing really on the forecast models until we get much closer to Christmas. It is the 20th of December here, and it looks like the GFS might be trying to spin up a weak tropical low here north of Arnhem Land. There's also enhanced moisture across the Eastern Bev forecast model here at the same time, so again, this does look like a pretty favourable thing. It looks like a pretty high congruency thing between the forecast models, which means it is a higher likelihood than happening, but keep in mind we are looking 15 days into the future now, not next Friday, but the Friday after, so take this forecast with a very, very heavy pinch of salt. In fact, take it with a boatload of salt, because we're looking at a tropical event 14 days into the future. It's going to be a very unreliable forecast either way. Either way, more on that in a future forecast update. This video has dragged on for long enough. If I've left your head spinning, then I do apologise. Please do let me know what confused you in the comment section down below, and if you need a kind of a wrap up for your location as well, I'd be more than happy to help you out in the comment section down below. And if you do have any feedback or something you'd like to see covered in a future forecast update, or if you feel like something's just not working in the comment section down below, or in the videos, please do let me know in the comment section down below, and I'd be happy to refine the videos to the audience's liking. But that is all for me today. A special shout out to the channel sponsors. Their names are on screen right now, and I could not run this show without them, but that is all for me, and I'll catch you all in the next storm. Goodbye.